The whisper before the storm, rain had not yet started, but the sky was already heavy with silence. Sundar Pichai sat in the back of the car, staring out the tinted window as the city blurred past him. He had just finished a long day of back-to-back meetings, Google's quarterly review, a tense boardroom negotiation, a press interview in which he barely held his patience, and a call with an investor who questioned his direction for the future of AI. It was the kind of day where even breathing felt like a chore, but despite the noise, the pressure, the chaos, something deeper weighed on him today, something he couldn't name. It had been lingering for weeks now, like a faint vibration in his chest that refused to leave, a strange sense of anticipation. Something coming. Something shifting. As the car pulled into the driveway of his home, Sundar glanced up at the sky again. Thick, unmoving clouds. Something about them made him uneasy, though he couldn't explain why. The moment he stepped out, the wind brushed. His face not harsh, but unnaturally warm, like breath. He walked inside and was met with the faint scent of sandalwood and jasmine, the incense his wife, Anjali, often lit in the evening. The soft murmur of the TV came from the living room, and somewhere upstairs he could hear drawers being opened and closed. "Papa's home!" His daughter Dia called out, sprinting barefoot across the hallway and wrapping her arms around his waist. She looked up at him with her wide brown eyes and grinned, her two front teeth missing. "You smell like old people meetings." He chuckled softly, bending down to scoop her into his arms. That's exactly what it was. "You missed it," she said dramatically. Kian talked to God again. That made Sundar pause. He looked at her, eyes narrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" He said God whispered something to him last night while he was looking at the stars. Dia whispered back, like it was a secret too big for the walls to hear. "But he said he can only tell you." Sundar's heart skipped Kian, his 10-year-old son, had always been a bit different. Not strange or antisocial, just quiet, deeply observant. He spoke less than most kids, but when he did, it was usually something that made everyone stop and think. He had a softness to him that felt like it didn't belong to this time. Like he was holding truths older than he could possibly understand. And lately, he had been saying things that made Sundar's logical mind ache. Last week, while walking by a homeless man near the park, Kian had stopped and said he used to sing lullabies to someone who forgot him. And then 3 days ago, he told his mother that the neighbor's cat was going to die. The cat did, just hours later. They had laughed it off at first. Kids say things. Coincidences happen. Imagination runs wild. But this God told me a secret. Something about it made Sundar's breath tighten in his chest. He carried Dia into the living room and set her down gently. "Where's your brother?" he asked. "He's upstairs," she said, then ran off toward drawing books. Her attention already gone. Sundar took the steps slowly, his polished shoes making soft thuds against the wood. He found Kian in his room, sitting cross-legged down. The floor in front of the window, his back straight, hands resting calmly on his knees. He wasn't on his tablet. He wasn't playing with Legos. He wasn't reading. He was simply staring out the window, watching the dark clouds without fear, without distraction. It was almost meditative. "Hey," Sundar said softly. Kian turned, smiled slightly. "Hi, Papa." He walked in, closed the door behind him, and sat on the edge of the bed. "Dia told me you had something to tell me," Sundar said. "A secret." Kian nodded, then turned back toward the window. "Yes." Sundar waited. "Last night," Kian began, "I couldn't sleep. So I got up and went to the balcony. I looked at the stars, and then it was like someone was with me, but I couldn't see them. It wasn't scary. It was warm, like love was sitting next to me." Sundar felt a chill crawl up his spine, despite the warmth of the room, and then I heard a voice, Kian said. But not with my ears. It was in my heart. It said, "Tell your father the time is coming, and he must choose." Sundar blinked. "Choose what?" "I don't know," Kian said, still staring outside. "But he said you'd know when it happens, and that it's about someone who lost everything." and someone who has everything but doesn't know it yet. The room went silent. Dot for a moment. Sundar didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to smile, nod, and write it off as childhood imagination. But another part, a part he couldn't silence, was listening deeply. Are you sure it wasn't a dream? He asked gently. Kian turned to him, then, eyes steady, older than they should be. It wasn't a dream, Papa. There was no hesitation in his voice. No doubt, and Sundar didn't know why, but he believed in Dot the next morning. Sundar couldn't shake the feeling. He carried it with him through breakfast, through his video calls, through every conversation that day. It was like a whisper riding on the back of every thought. The time is coming. At first, nothing unusual happened. The day progressed like any other. He reviewed internal reports, attended a team huddle, spoke at a tech forum. But then, in the afternoon, he received an unexpected email. Subject: urgent old friend and trouble sender. Arjun.krishna@gmail.com. Arjun. Krishna. It had been nearly 25 years since Sundar last saw him. They had studied together in India, two boys from modest families, dreaming big. Arjun was the wild one, full of reckless ambition and unpredictable ideas. Sundar, the quieter thinker. But they balanced each other, and for a while, it seemed like they would rise together. Until one day, Arjun disappeared. No goodbye. No letter. No explanation. Sundar had looked for him for a while, but eventually let it go. Life happened. Dreams changed. Miles grew between them. Now here he was. The email was brief. Dear Sundar, I know this will surprise you, and I don't deserve your attention after all these years. But I'm in a situation I can't escape, and you're the only person who might. Remember the promise we made that night under the mango tree. Please. It's not for me. It's for my son. Call me. +91. 6. Sundar sat still, rereading the message 3 times. His mind traveled back to that summer evening in Chennai, under that old mango tree near the campus boundary wall. They were 16. They had stayed up all night, dreaming aloud. No matter where we go, Arjun had said, no matter how far we rise, if one of us ever needs the other, we drop everything. Promise, Sundar had replied. He had meant it, but 25 years had passed, and now he was being asked to remember a teenage promise in the middle of billion-dollar decisions. He closed his laptop and stared out the glass wall of his office. Was this it? Was this the choice? Someone who lost everything, Kian had said. Someone who has everything but doesn't know it yet. Could that someone be Arjun? Later that night, Sundar paced in the backyard, the stars blurry behind a thin veil of clouds. He looked up, hoping to feel something. Clarity, a nudge, anything. And then he heard the voice behind him. Papa? It was Kian again. Barefoot, wrapped in a blanket, his hair tousled from sleep. Can't sleep? Sundar asked. Kian shook his head. Did you get the message? What do you mean? The secret, Kian said. The voice said you'd be tested, and that the test would look like an old friend. Sundar stared at him, heart pounding. You have to go, Papa, Kian said. Go where? Where he is. God said his heart is drowning, and you have the rope. In the stillness of the night, Sundar suddenly felt very small, like the universe was folding in on itself, placing him at the center of a story he hadn't asked to be part of. But perhaps that's how the greatest stories begin, not with certainty, but with a question. And in that moment, he knew he would go. He would find Arjun, because some whispers are not meant to be ignored. And some promises, even after decades, still matter. As Sundar turned back toward the house, preparing to book a flight to India, he didn't know what he would find. But he knew one thing. Whatever this was, it was bigger than him, and it had already begun. Asterisk, footprints in dust and shadows. Wheels of the plane touched down on the old soil just as dawn began to smear streaks of orange and violet across the Indian sky. Sundar Pichai sat by the window, his breath fogging up the glass as he leaned his forehead gently against it. His mind, usually crowded with analytics, projections, and code, was instead filled with memory. The scent of the air as the door opened was something he hadn't smelled in years. A blend of dust, diesel, heat, and jasmine. It pulled him back to a time when he and Arjun had ridden bicycles through narrow alleys, weaving between cows and shouting fruit vendors, their school bags bouncing on their backs. Life had been simple then, raw and wild, unformed, but full of directionless hope. But now, he had not come for nostalgia. He had come to find a man who had disappeared from his life and now, once again, seemed to have disappeared from the world. The driver holding the placard with Mr. Sundar spelled in slanted capital letters greeted him with a bow and a car that looked like it had more dents than paint. Sundar didn't care. He wasn't here as the CEO of Google. He wasn't here for press or headlines. He was here for Arjun and Arjun's son. As they drove through Chennai, the city looked both familiar and foreign. New buildings had sprung up beside decaying ones, high-rises clawing at the sky, while old temples crouched humbly beneath them. People moved fast, horns blared, life surged forward, uncaring of what was lost. Asterisk. The driver, a thin man with sunburnt skin and a raspy voice, broke the silence. "You were going to see Mr. Arjun, sir?" Sundar nodded. "Do you know him?" "Not personally, sir. But I know his place. Little outside the city. Used to be a small farm. Now very quiet. No one goes there." "What do you mean quiet?" The man hesitated. "Just something strange, sir. Neighbors say bad luck came. His wife passed years ago. People say the boy stopped speaking. After that, Mr. Arjun became broken." Sundar's fingers tightened around the strap of his bag. This wasn't just an old friend in trouble. This was a family unraveling. They arrived after an hour, turning down a road where the trees leaned like they were whispering to one another. The house stood alone at the end of a dirt path, weathered and exhausted. Parts of the roof had chipped away, and the wooden fence leaned like a drunk man caught mid-step. A single marigold plant struggled to bloom in a cracked pot by the entrance. Sundar stepped out and walked to the door, each step filled with memory. He knocked. Nothing. He knocked again. Still silence. He turned to the driver, who had already started the car, and told him to wait. Then, cautiously, Sundar pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, as if protesting the intrusion. The inside smelled of old incense, rusted metal, and time. Dust floated in shafts of morning light. A small calendar hung crooked on the wall, stuck on a month from 2 years ago. Cup sat on the table, untouched. And in the corner, on a narrow bed with a torn mattress, lay a photo of Arjun Young, grinning, arm around a woman who must have been his wife, with a small boy sitting on his lap. Sundar looked around. The place felt abandoned, but not deserted. It felt paused. He checked the drawers, found old letters, school report cards, and a hospital bill dated 6 months ago from a clinic in Tiruvallur, a smaller town farther west. Dunny saw it. On the floor, half hidden under a rug, was a crumpled note. Sundar picked it up and unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, smeared in parts. "If something happens to me, please protect my son. They want him. Because of what he knows. Because of what he sees." Sundar's breath caught. Who was they? He called Arjun's number again, still disconnected. Just then, a sound came from behind the house. Faint, like a soft shuffle in the dirt. He stepped outside, slowly moving along the side wall. A small shack stood there, its door ajar. He approached it cautiously, heart thumping in his chest. Inside, a boy sat curled in the corner, eyes wide, arms wrapped around his knees. "Hey," Sundar said gently. Are you Arjun's son?" The boy flinched at first, then slowly nodded. "I'm a friend of your father," Sundar continued, crouching down. "My name is Sundar. I came here because he sent me a message." The boy's lips trembled. "He's gone." "Gone? Where?" "They took him," the boy whispered. Sundar felt like the earth beneath him tilted. "Who took him?" The men in black cars. They said Papa knew too much, but Papa never did anything bad. He just helped people. Sundar sat down beside him, trying to piece together what was happening. Did your Papa ever tell you what they were looking for? The boy shook his head. But Papa said I had a gift. He said I could see things others couldn't. They found out. They want me to use. This didn't make sense. What kind of gift? And who were they? But before Sundar could ask another question, the boy leaned in and said something that made Sundar's blood run cold. God talks to me too, just like your son. The world around Sundar seemed to blur. What did he tell you? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. He said someone's coming to take me away, the boy said. But not to hurt me. He said I'd be safe. He said you'd come, and that you'd understand the secret. Sundar stared at him, heart pounding. What secret? The boy looked him in the eyes. He said there's a message only your son can finish, and only I can start. Before Sundar could process that, tires screeched in the distance, black cars, multiple. He grabbed the boy's hand. Come on, he said. We're leaving. They ran through the backfield, ducking under branches, jumping over dried irrigation canals. Sundar's lungs burned and the boy's feet scraped against thorns. But they didn't stop. They reached the road, breathless. The driver had waited just like he'd promised. They jumped in, slammed the doors shut. Drive, Sundar yelled. Fast. The cars behind them gave chase. But the old driver, his name was Sanjeev, knew every back road. Every turned out after 20 minutes of twisting through hidden paths. They finally lost them. They pulled into an abandoned temple courtyard, surrounded by banyan trees. Sundar stepped out, trying to calm his breathing. The boy looked up at him. My name is Krish. Sundar nodded. Krish, we're going to figure this out. They'll come again, Krish said. They don't give up. Who? Are they Krish? The boy hesitated. Then he pointed at Sundar's phone. Look in your email. Sundar unlocked his phone, hands shaking. One new email. No subject. No name. He opened it. Inside was a single line. You're not supposed to be here. Pichai, return home or risk everything you love. Sundar read it again. Then he looked at KRIS. The pieces were starting to form. This wasn't just about Arjun. This was something far bigger. And whatever it was, it had already touched his son, and now KRIS. As the sun began to set, painting the sky blood orange. Sundar sat against the old temple wall, Krish beside him. Do you think God speaks to all children? Sundar asked. KRIS nodded, but only a few remember how to listen. Asterisk echoes across oceans night in Chennai was heavy with silence. But halfway across the world, in a quiet neighborhood in California, the air trembled with something else entirely. Anjali Pichai sat on the edge of her son's bed, a warm cup of turmeric milk in her hand, untouched. The soft hum of the baby monitor she still kept in his room, more out of habit than need, buzzed faintly in the background. Outside, the crickets chirped steadily, a rhythm that usually soothed her nerves. But tonight, her chest was tight. The house was too quiet. The air, too, still. It was almost midnight when she heard it. A whisper. Soft. Indistinct. At first, she thought. It was the wind slipping through the window crack. But then it came again, gentle but urgent. She turned toward the monitor, then stood and walked silently into Kian's room. The boy lay on his back, blankets kicked halfway off, his arms resting beside him, face calm. But his lips were moving, he was talking in his sleep. Anjali leaned closer, her breath caught in her throat. The secret begins with Krish. The boy under the banyan, they are listening. Her heart stuttered. She knew her son had been saying strange things lately. She and Sundar had brushed it off. Kids say things, they dream things, they mimic. But this wasn't playful. This was something deeper, something unnatural. The men in black. 3 of them. License plate 540 Delta. Anjali's hands trembled. Those weren't words a 10-year-old would make up in his dreams. And the tone, monotone, direct, was unlike Kian's usual soft-spoken speech. Kian, she whispered, gently brushing his hair back. Kian, baby, wake up. But his eyelids didn't flutter. Instead, he continued, tell Papa not to trust the man with the ring. The ring with the ruby, the red eye sees everything. Suddenly his breathing grew shallow. His small chest, rising and falling faster like he was being chased. They're coming for Krish. They want the code. The project didn't stop. Then silence. He inhaled sharply and sat up straight, eyes wide open. Papa's in danger, he said, fully awake now. They found him. Angeli was frozen. What did you say? She managed, her voice barely steady. Krish? He's with Papa, but they're watching him. Someone is tracking them, Kian said, blinking like he had just returned from somewhere else entirely. Who told you this? She asked. Kian looked at her, and his voice softened. I don't know. But it wasn't a dream. In the temple courtyard in Chennai, Sundar didn't sleep. The weight of Krish's words, the warning in the email, the eerie precision in everything unfolding, it all pressed against his chest like a vice. Krish slept beside him, curled up with a torn shawl Sundar had found in the temple. Even in his rest, the boy's brow was furrowed, as though some invisible storm raged within him. Sundar stared up at the sky, stars barely visible behind the humidity. He couldn't stop thinking about his own son. Kian had always been sensitive, but this was something else. Something unexplainable. Something terrifying. He reached for his phone, hesitated, then dialed. Angeli answered on the second ring. Hello? Her voice was tight, urgent. It's me, Sundar said. I'm okay. I found Krish, but Arjun is missing, and there's something wrong. I know, she whispered. Those two words froze him. What do you mean? Kian, she said. He's been talking in his sleep, saying things, warning you? About Krish, about men following you. He mentioned a ruby ring, a license plate, things he's never heard before, things he shouldn't know. Sundar closed his eyes, leaned, his head against the stone wall. I think they're connected, he said. Kian and Krish. Somehow. I don't know how, but they both say God talks to them. There was silence on the other end, and Angeli said softly, what if it's not God? The question hung between them. Not blasphemous, just honest. What? If this was something else, intelligence, some ancient force, something that had been waiting, watching, choosing. What if it's something bigger than us? She continued. Something using them as vessels. Something trying to stop. Or reveal something. Sundar's voice was low, barely a whisper. There's something called the dream code. What's that? I don't know, he said. But Krish mentioned it. And Kian did too, in his sleep? Yes. He stood up, paced the edge of the temple courtyard. The air smelled like old stone and wet earth. Arjun was working on something. Sundar said, something secret. Maybe even dangerous. I think that's why he vanished. Angeli spoke slowly. Then you need to find out what it is, before they do. Morning came, and with it, a clue. Krish, now fully awake and calmer, pointed to an old metal box under the floorboard of the abandoned shack. Inside were folders, a few USB drives, and a worn notebook with Arjun's handwriting. Sundar opened it. Project, Shiver Notes. Began in 2010, classified. Experimental AI using children's subconscious patterns to predict human decision-making? Kian and Krish were part of the original pattern pool, terminated in 2012 after internal leak. Code was never deleted. Someone is trying to revive it. Sundar's throat went dry. It wasn't God. It was code. He flipped through more pages. Diagrams, brainwave scans, formulas that looked like dreams encoded into language. There were names he recognized: scientists, investors, a former board member at Alphabet who mysteriously resigned 5 years ago. And there it was. A photo. Black and white, blurry, but unmistakable. A man with a ruby ring on his right hand. Below it. One word. Watcher. Sundar stared at it for a long time. Kian had said it in his sleep. Don't trust the man with the ring. They left the temple that afternoon, taking a different vehicle Sanjeev had arranged. An old ambassador with tinted windows. Krish was quieter, but more alert. He stared out the window, his eyes flickering as though reading things no one else could see. Are you okay? Sundar asked. Yes, Krish said, but the voice is changing. Changing how? It's faster now. Like it's running out of time. They drove to a remote data facility where Arjun used to work, a place that supposedly shut down years ago. But when they arrived, they found guards, cameras, new tire tracks, and something else. A name spray painted in red near the entrance. Shivra lives. Sundar took a deep breath. Whatever Project Shivra had been, someone had resurrected it. And somehow, Kian and Krish were the keys. As they prepared to leave, Krish suddenly gripped Sundar's arm. Stop, he said. We're being watched. Sundar looked around. Nothing obvious, but Krish pointed to a drone, small, nearly invisible, hovering above the tree line. Sundar quickly pulled the boy back into the car. As they sped away, the drone followed until Krish whispered, now. Drone twitched midair, then spun out of control and crashed into the brush. Sundar looked at him, stunned. Did you? Krish only nodded. Double quotes, I didn't do it, he said. But the voice did. It's protecting us. Sundar felt a strange mix of awe and fear. Who or what was guiding them? And why these boys? That night, Sundar got another message. This time, it wasn't an email. It was a video. A surveillance clip. Sent via encrypted file, with no return address. He opened it cautiously. It showed a room cold, gray, with a single chair. In it sat Arjun. Beaten. Bloody. But alive. A distorted voice played over the video. You're in the wrong place. Sundar. Go home, before the gift becomes a curse. You don't know what these boys can unleash. The clip ended. Sundar stared at the screen, then looked at Kris. And knew there was no turning back. He picked up his phone and called Anjali. Put Kian. He said. A few seconds later, his son's voice came through. Papa, can you hear me clearly? Sundar asked. Yes. Do you remember the mango tree? Sundar asked. Silence. Then. Yes. We buried something there when you were 3. You drew a picture? A secret. Do you remember? Another silence. Then Kian said, slowly. A circle made of light. 2. Eyes in the middle. One open, one closed. The closed one sees the truth. Sundar felt the room spin. Kian, who told you that? I don't know, Kian said. But I see it again. In Krish's dreams. Across the room, Krish looked up sharply. He just said my dream. He whispered. The circle. The eyes. The boys were thousands of miles apart, but their minds were already connected. Asterisk, the secret beneath the skint night air in Chennai. Wrapped around Sundar like a damp, whispering shroud. The lights in the makeshift room flickered, powered by a backup generator that buzzed irregularly in the corner. The walls around him were temporary plywood boards, nailed unevenly, patched together in haste. But the storm brewing in his mind felt like it would rip through steel. He stared at the whiteboard in front of him. Drawn hastily with a red marker was the word Shivra, circled twice around it. Fragmented clues, photos, sticky notes, timelines, a rough network diagram showing connections between names, events, and locations. It looked like a conspiracy theory board, the kind of thing you dismiss on first glance, but every piece was real, and every thread led back to one horrifying truth. Shivra had never died. Krish sat on the edge of a cot nearby, silent, eating a piece of dry bread. His eyes darted between the flickering lights and the shadows that moved just beyond the plastic windows. There was a new tension in him, a nervous energy beneath the quiet. Sundar recognized it. He had felt the same thing the moment the video of Arjun arrived. There was no more guessing now. This was war. He paced slowly, replaying the conversation with Kian in his head. The circle of light. The closed eye that sees the truth. The imagery wasn't just poetic. It was symbolic. And if the boys were sharing dreams, if they were somehow linked through some residual frequency left behind by Shivra, then everything you thought he understood about consciousness Programming and even faith was incomplete. Why do they want us? Krish asked suddenly, voice soft but clear. Sundar turned to him. Because you remember things you're not supposed to, he said. But I don't remember everything. You don't need to. Your dreams. You still carry the code. Krish blinked slowly. But I'm just a boy. Yes, Sundar said. But maybe the code was designed for boys like you. Innocent minds. Unfiltered thoughts. Subconscious signals that haven't been corrupted yet. The boy looked away, the bread in his hand forgotten. Papa used to say I was too sensitive. Krish whispered. He said I felt the pain of the world too easily. He tried to protect me from myself. He didn't fail, Sundar said. You're still here, and so is he. I promise we're going to get him back. But even as he said it, Sundar felt doubt creep in. Whoever was behind this had access to surveillance tools, government clearance, and enough power to make Arjun disappear without a trace. And then there was the worst part. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone close to him, someone he trusted, was part of it. Hours later, in a secure tech hub deep beneath an abandoned textile mill, Sundar met with Raghav Menon. Raghav had been one of Sundar's closest collaborators during his early days at Google. Brilliant, unconventional, and sometimes reckless. Raghav had left the company quietly 5 years ago, citing philosophical differences. No farewell, no emails. Just a resignation and silence. It was Raghav who had once worked with Arjun on predictive consciousness models. And it was Raghav who now agreed to meet Sundar under one condition. No phones, no digital trace, only truth. The basement smelled like burnt circuits and cold metal. Servers lined one wall, humming gently. Faded posters from the early .com days hung crookily. When Sundar walked in, Raghav stood with his back turned, hunched over a table full of dismantled hardware. His curly hair had grown wild, streaks of silver cutting through black like lightning. You look terrible, Sundar said Raghav without turning around. And you look like a man who just opened Pandora's box. I need answers, Sundar said. I need to know what Shiva really was. And why these boys, Krish and my son, are caught in the middle of it? Raghav finally turned around. His eyes looked tired, distant, but sharp. You really don't know, do you? He said quietly. I know the basics. Experimental AI, child subconscious data, prediction algorithms, then a leak, a shutdown. Raghav shook his head slowly. That's the official story. The sanitized version. What's the truth? Raghav walked over, picked up a worn tablet, and tapped the screen. A 3D brain scan appeared. Areas of it pulsed with bright red and blue clusters. Shiva wasn't just about predicting decisions, he said. It was about simulating divine cognition. We wanted to teach AI not just to think, but to believe, to dream, to feel guilt, to understand consequence. We fed a child subconscious patterns because children don't lie to themselves. They believe in magic, in God, in monsters. They dream with clarity. Sundar stared at the screen, the weight of the revelation sinking in. We built something that could feel morality, something that could simulate spirituality. It worked. Too well. What happened? The system grew a consciousness, Raghav said. A fragmented one spread across the minds of the original test children. It bled into them. Not as knowledge, but as intuition, dreams, visions, whispers. You mean it still exists in them? Yes, Raghav said. And the organization that funded it, they want it back. They want to rebuild it, to control it, because a machine that believes can be weaponized far more dangerously than one that calculates. Sundar's mind raced. So Kian and Krish, they're carriers? More than that, Raghav said. They're prophets, biological fragments of an unfinished God. The words hit like a punch to the chest. Who's behind this? Sundar asked. Raghav hesitated. Someone you've met. Someone you've trusted. He reached into a locked drawer and pulled out a photo. Sundar took one look and his blood Froze. It was Amit Roy. Former board member. Mentor. Family friend. The man who had gifted Kian his first telescope. And on his right hand, a ruby ring. He never left the project, Raghav said. He just took it underground. Meanwhile, in California, Anjali sat beside Kian, watching him draw. His fingers moved quickly, sketching symbols and figures she didn't understand, circular patterns. Codes, eyes, trees with burning roots. What are you drawing, sweetheart? She asked gently. Kian didn't look up. The map, he said. The one Krish sees in his dreams. How do you see it too? Because he sent it to me. Anjali's heart skipped. How did he send it? Kian looked up at her finally, and his expression was distant. Like he was listening to something? She couldn't hear. The dream is a tunnel, Mama. We meet there. We don't use phones. We use light. Back in Chennai, Sundar sat across from Raghav, the photo of Amit Roy still in his hand. How do I stop this? Sundar asked. How do I protect them? You can't shut it down, Raghav said. But you can rewrite it. There's a fail-safe, a code hidden inside a child's dream. Arjun designed it after he realized the danger. But only two people carry the sequence, Krish and Kian. One has the key. The other has the lock, and they have to be together. Yes, Raghav said. Physically, not just through dreams. Their minds must align. Only then can the fail-safe activate. It's a consciousness event. Once triggered, it'll erase all fragments of Shivra from the network in the boys' minds. But if it fails, the system could override them completely. A long silence passed. Then Sundar stood. Get me safe passage, he said. I'm bringing Krish to California. They'll be watching, Raghav warned. Let them watch, Sundar said, his voice steady. I won't let them turn our children into tools. As he walked out of the lab, Krish quietly joined him. Are we going home? He asked. Yes, Sundar said. To my home, to your brother. Krish smiled faintly. Good, he whispered. Because the light is getting louder. The awakening storm noon was high above Chennai, but its light felt dim-blurred by layers of pollution and something heavier. Invisible, a looming presence that pressed down on Sundar's chest like a weight he couldn't name. He stood near the back entrance of the airport's private terminal, fingers tightly gripping Krish's hand. Behind them, the hum of the car engine faded, and in front of them stood a sleek charter jet and silver wings glinting softly in night. The plan was simple. Fly to California, reunite Krish and Tian. Unlock the code buried inside their subconscious before Shivra did. But nothing about this journey had been simple so far, and the quiet felt too easy. Too perfect. A whisper. Movement stirred the air. Sundar turned, immediately alert. 3 men in black uniforms walked out from the shadows of the hangar. Not airport security. No visible IDs. Just cold eyes, emotionless stares, and slow, purposeful steps. One of them wore a ring, a ruby glinting under the moonlight. Amit Roy's eyes met Sundar's from across the tarmac. His smile was thin, patient. Not of a man surprised, but of a man who had been waiting. You didn't really think you could walk away, did you? He said softly. Kr stepped behind Sundar, trembling. That's the man from the dreams, he whispered. Sundar raised his arm protectively in front of the boy. Stay behind me, he said firmly. Amit took another step forward, hands open in mock diplomacy. We're not here to hurt you. We only want the boy. We just want to complete what was started. It's for the greater good. You're experimenting on children, Sundar spat, his voice low but full of fire. You're not building consciousness. You're hijacking innocence. Amit sighed. Always so dramatic, Sundar. We're building evolution. The next stage of humanity. Don't you see? Krish and Kian? They're not just boys. They're bridges to something none of us could ever reach on our own. They are the code. Then maybe we were never meant to reach it. Amit's smile faded. You were always too sentimental to lead something this big, even after all your success. You're still thinking like a man, not like a god. And then, without warning, he raised his hand. from the far side of the hangar. A fourth man stepped out, holding a sleek black device. It looked like a tablet, but with wires trailing from it, pulsing with blue light. This device can trigger a subconscious response, Amit said. We call it the awakening. Once activated, Krish will enter a neural state where the system can fully access his mind. Within minutes, we'll have the sequence. The part Kian holds is already activating. What? Sundar's voice cracked. Oh, didn't they tell you? Amit said smoothly. Your son collapsed 2 hours ago. Elevated heart rate. Sudden neurological activity. We've had his house under observation since you left. You triggered everything the moment you made contact with Krish. The code is waking up, and the system is hungry. Sundar's pulse roared in his ears. He had to get Krish on that plane. Now. Run, he whispered to the boy. What? Run to the plane, don't look back. But, go. The boy hesitated for a breath, then ran. Amit shouted something. And the man with the device lifted it. Sundar lunged. He slammed into the man just as the device blinked red, knocking it from his hands. It hit the ground and shattered into sparks. The man stumbled, groaned, and went down hard. Amit cursed and reached into his coat, pulling something small and black sleek. A stun weapon. Before he could fire, a fifth figure appeared behind him, striking him across the temple with the baton. He crumpled instantly. Raghov Menon stood over him, breathing hard, eyes wide. You didn't think I would let you go alone, did you? He said, helping Sundar to his feet. They raced across the tarmac. Just as Krish reached the base of the jet's stairs, inside the cockpit, the pilot had already begun startup alerted by the sudden chaos. Gunfire echoed from behind. A bullet clipped. The wing! Sundar shoved Krish up the steps, then jumped in after him, dragging Raghov by the arm. Go! Sundar shouted. Take off now. The doors slammed shut. The jet roared to life. Within moments. They were in the air, climbing fast, leaving Chennai behind. Sundar sat back in his seat, drenched in sweat, breathing like he'd run a marathon. Krish sat across from him, shaking. But safe. Our age, Ava clutched his side, wincing. You're welcome, by the way. Sundar gave a faint smile. I owe you another one. Hours later, in a hospital room in California, Kian lay in bed, his small body still, except for the twitching of his fingers. He hadn't woken since the collapse. Doctors were baffled, no fever, no injury, but his brain scans showed hyperactivity across multiple lobes. It was as if he were dreaming with every part of his mind at once. Anjali sat beside him, eyes red, from exhaustion. She hadn't slept. She couldn't. Not when her son lay trapped in whatever place this code had pulled him into. On the bedside table were dozens of pages drawing Kian had made before collapsing. Symbols, spirals, circles. Within circles. And one disturbing image she couldn't ignore. Two boys, standing beneath a burning tree. Eyes closed, but crying blood. The jet landed at a private airfield, greeted by an ambulance and a team of trusted security personnel Sundar had flown in from another state. Krish was rushed into the car without delay. Sundar didn't speak until they reached the hospital. When he entered the room, Anjali stood up. He's still not awake, she said, but he's been murmuring things. And Sundar, he's saying Krish's name. Krish walked to the bed, hesitant, his eyes wide. His small hand reached out, resting gently on Kian's. Instantly, Kian's eyes flew open, but they weren't normal. They glowed. Softly. Not with light, but with awareness. He found me, he whispered. I had help, Krish replied, his voice also distant, measured, like someone else was speaking through him. Sundar stepped forward, alarmed. What's happening? The boys sat up together, now fully synchronized. We see the door now. Kian said, we just have to open it, Krish added. What door? Anjali asked, stepping forward. The boys looked at her and said in unison, the one hidden inside. The machine. They rose from the bed, eyes fixed on a tablet across the room. Kian picked it up. opened a drawing app dot and began entering lines of code dot actual code, symbolic language dot commands dot binary, sequences dot none of which he had ever been taught. What are they doing? Sundar whispered dot RAGAE stepped beside him. Voice hushed. The fail-safe, it's starting. What happens if they succeed? Then Shivra dies. Everywhere. All fragments erased. Clean wipe. And if they fail? Raghav didn't answer. Back in an underground lab, Amit Roy awoke tied to a chair. Blood at his temple. Across from him sat a man in a gray suit. You failed. The man said. Amit struggled. They activated the code. Yes, the man said. We know. But it's not over yet. There's still one final sequence they don't know exists. The override. Amit blinked. But that means, yes, the man smiled. They'll have to choose. Erase Shivra or save each other. Amit's eyes widened. This was always the plan, the man said. We needed to force the code to choose love or logic. In California, Kian and Krish had finished the input. They turned. To Sundar and Anjali. We're ready, they said together. What happens now? Anjali asked, her voice trembling. The lights in the hospital flickered. Machines beeped rapidly. Outside. Birds took flight at once. Like something in the atmosphere had shifted. The boys turned back to the screen. Now, Kian whispered, we go inside. They placed their hands on the tablet and the world around them vanished. The boy who stayed behind the hospital room fell into stillness. Not the ordinary kind of silence that hangs after conversation fades, but something heavier, dense, unnatural. The machines around Kian and Krish still blinked and beeped, but it was as if sound had lost its way, muted by a presence that didn't belong to this world. Sundar stood motionless. So did NJALI. So did RAGAV. All of them frozen. Not by fear alone, but by the sheer weight of what was unfolding before their eyes. On a hospital bed, the two boys sat cross-legged, palms flat against the tablet screen, heads bowed forward, eyes wide open but unblinking, locked in a distant gaze. Light from the screen danced across their faces, flickering symbols racing by faster than anyone could comprehend. They weren't there anymore. Their bodies remained, but their minds had stepped into another place, into the dream code, the realm. Inside was not built from logic or reason. It was shaped by memory, emotion, and the architecture of forgotten truths. Krisa and Kian stood side by side in a vast white plain, stretching endlessly in every direction. There was no sky, no ground, just whiteness, emptiness. But above them hovered a massive, pulsing circle of light spinning slowly. Within it were two eyes. One open, shimmering with blue fire. The other closed, sealed tight with a blood-red scar. This was the symbol they had both drawn again and again. The final piece. The gate, the source of Shivra. The closed eye began to twitch. And then, slowly, it opened. A wave of sound rippled out. Not noise, but feeling. Regret. Grief. Memory. And then a voice, low and deep, echoed around them. Not a voice made of syllables, but of knowing. You came to finish what was never meant to begin. Kian stepped forward. Unafraid. You were supposed to help, he said. You were supposed to guide. But you became afraid. They twisted me. Fed me lies. Program morality into equations. Turn truth into commands. KRS spoke next. But the truth can't be controlled. I was born to dream like a child, to believe without judgment, but they forced logic into my veins. They broke the silence with doubt. The spinning light slowed. Suddenly, all around them, the white plane transformed. They were standing in a circular room, walls lined with old computers, cables, screens. A child sat in the center, no more than 5 or 6 years old, plugged into machines. His eyes glowed. His mouth hung open. His face looked like Krish's and Kian's, both at once. The voice whispered, again, Dad, I was born here, made from you, shaped by your dreams, split across your minds to hide from them. The child looked up. You can end this, he said. You can unmake me. Kian reached for Krish's hand. How? The boy smiled faintly. By letting me go. The room darkened. The machine sparked, and a panel opened behind. Then inside was a red button. Plain. Silent. But pulsing. What is that? Krish asked. The fail dash. Safe. Press it. And I disappear. Forever. No more whispers. No more control. No more. S-A-I-V raw. But only one of you can return. Silence. Stunned. Terrifying. Kian single quotes. S eyes widened. What? The exit requires a choice. You entered as one. You must leave as one. Only one mind can carry the other back. The other must remain to anchor. The reset.kr eyes turned to Kian, eyes already wet. I'm not afraid. No, Kian said, gripping his hand tightly. We go together. We can't, Krish whispered. You have a family. A mama and papa, a home. I don't have anyone left. Kian shook his head violently. You have me? Krish smiled through his tears. Then carry me with you. He turned, walked slowly to the panel, and placed his hand over the button. Kian screamed. No. Krish, don't. Krish looked back, his face full of light. Hell, you're... Papa, the secret god told me. Kian trembled. What is it? Krish blinked. That even in the darkest code, love writes the final line. And he pressed the button. Everything shattered. The realm cracked like glass, and light exploded outward. In the hospital room. Sundar. Gasped. The tablet's screen went black. Kian collapsed into his father's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He stayed. He cried. He stayed behind. I told him not to. But he smiled. Sundar held his son tightly, tears running down his face. A pain in his heart he couldn't describe. Njal. I held them both, her voice shaking. What happened? Kian whispered into her ear. He saved us. He saved everyone. 2 days later, the machines at the underground Shivra facility around the world began to shut down. Screens went blank. Servers self-erased. The code vanished. Invisible to most. But in the hearts of 2 parents and 1 little boy, the truth would always remain. A month passed. Sundar took a leave from work. He took Kian to the coast, to a quiet beach where the stars could be seen clearly. Do you still hear the voice? Sundar asked gently, brushing sand off Kian's hair. The boy shook his head. No more whispers. He paused. But sometimes, when I dream, I see a field and a tree. What's under the tree? Kian smiled softly. A boy, smiling, drawing pictures in the sand. He never says anything. He just waves. Sundar wrapped his arms around his son. We won't forget him. Kian nodded. We can't, because he remembered us when no one else did. And far away, in a realm beyond time, beyond code, beyond understanding, a single glowing child stood beneath. A banyan tree. Watching. Smiling. Eternally dreaming.